to start the recording. So this will be recorded. We'll send this out after the webinar concludes. So if for some reason you need to jump off or have something that comes up during the webinar, we'll make sure you get this content. Today's topic is 5 things every sponsorship team should be doing to win 2024. Most of you are probably entering your budgeting and planning season, which is great. So you're probably looking at 2023, seeing what worked well for you this year, and then you're thinking ahead towards next year. So that's kind of where our brains are as well with this panel discussion. Really excited to get us kicked off today. We've got, I was trying to add up the math here, Jason. We probably got half a century's worth of sponsorship experience between both of you, which is just amazing. The things that both of you have seen and accomplished throughout your careers thus far. As someone who's new to the sponsorship industry, I find a lot of value in hearing your experiences. So I'm really excited to get this kicked off. And with that being said,
that makes me feel old.
Wise is the correct word there, Jason. Wise. But without further ado, I'll go ahead and kick it off to you guys.
Great. Awesome. Thanks, Jesse. And I can't be more grateful for Paula to come on and just talk shop a little bit, and thankful for all of you who are joining us today, and hopefully gain some insight and value from the discussion that Paula and I have today. And she and I were chatting a little bit about what the topic could be, and we thought this would be a great topic to really just tackle the things that we should be looking at going into next year. And as many of you know, SMA, Paula and the team put together an amazing conference, which was held last month in Chicago, and nothing but great reviews there, and a lot of knowledge being thrown around at the conference for our industry. And not just for a lot of times people look at sports, right, when they think of sponsorship, but not just sports, but also, you know, events and fairs and entertainment and nonprofits and the arts and everything in between, right? And so it's really fun to just look at sponsorship holistically, and not for just a specific area, but how can we look at it from a broader perspective. So Paula and everyone, I just express my gratitude and thanks for everyone being on here today. But Paula, just with the summit, why don't you what are some key takeaways this year from the summit, or even diving in a little bit deeper, like what are things that maybe highlight some of the things that were talked about at the summit, but then in conjunction, what are some of the things that maybe weren't talked about that should be being talked about, you know, at getting ready for 2024?
Yeah. Wonderful. I love talking about what I heard in the hallways. And I think a sign of a great conference is the conversations that happen between the sessions. And so thank you. Would love to talk more about that. Before I jump in, though, let me just say, Jason, thank you, first of all, for your founding membership of SMA. I really appreciate your continued support of the work that we're doing to unite and inspire and connect the sponsorship marketing industry. And I really do appreciate your comments about sports as well, because at the summit and all of the work that we do throughout the year is to represent the industry and to support the industry across all of the various sponsor properties. So arts, museums, fairs, festivals, zoos, park and rec, municipalities. I mean, there's so many sponsorship opportunities out there these days outside of professional sports. And so it's important we're really having some good conversations. So thank you.
Good.
Yeah. You know, a few of the key things, I don't think this is going to surprise the audience, but some of the common threads throughout the summit that were talked about, certainly data and metrics. And, you know, James Ho of Zoom talked a lot about delivering key metrics. I thought he summed it up really well, but also key moments, right? To really show the sponsorship success. I mean, data and analytics continue to be a really hot topic in sponsorship, and it's because the brands are demanding it, because other forms of marketing are highly measurable and sponsorship is not easily measurable. and we need to find ways to show the effectiveness of it. So that was a very
More of an art. It's
common.
more of an art than a science, right?
Yeah.
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 It is. I mean, I think that, there are some pretty good valuation models out there. I know we have one that we use, and there are several of them, but they're not fully adopted and fully transparent throughout the industry. And I think this is the key to our growth, is that we have to figure out how to provide, more transparency into how we're determining the price and determining the value of sponsorships. And that's where our growth is really going to come from. So metrics, measurement, data, research, amazing panel conversation with Matt from the Golden State Warriors, and Marcus from Miami Dolphins, and Jazz from Rakuten, and James from Zoom. I mean, it was just a kick-ass panel conversation about measurement and metrics. And we'll be sure to keep talking about it. Also, there was a lot of conversation around DEI and viewing sponsorships through a DEI lens. Tony Wells, formerly the chief media officer at Verizon, spoke a lot about this. Sponsorship has always been a common thread throughout his entire career, and he feels pretty passionate about sponsorship. And Abdelaziz talked about Bubba Watson's block party with NASCAR, right? When we talk about DEI, let's watch what Bubba Watson is doing, what NASCAR is doing. But he did this big block party event, and he attracted 82% of the audience were first-time NASCAR attendees. So that goes to show you how, DEI is the way, diversity is the way to expansion and growth, right? It's the path. And he's showing us how to do that, as is NASCAR. And then the other thing that I'll mention is, sponsorships that intersect with social good continue to be a big topic. Jeff Hansen from Microsoft, and June Ashley from Starbucks talked about brand love, right? And how it's important that consumers fall in love with brands today. And I think this is great news, by the way, for all of us in sponsorship marketing, right? Because that's what sponsorship does. It connects with people emotionally, and brands need people, their customers, right, to fall in love with them. So a lot of conversations around brand love and how that's really fueled by purpose-led partnerships that uplift communities and spark human connections and improve our communities and really become a win for everybody who's involved. So I think those were definitely three of the big key takeaways for me from the summit this year. Pretty consistent throughout the speaker presentations.
I love that.
That's awesome.
And brand is huge too, right? Because it's that association, that brand love. And I actually haven't really thought about it that way. You just think of like brand association or what it is, but brand love. I have a buddy of mine that is in love with Nike, and everything, every shoe, every piece of clothing that he owns is Nike. And it's this association that he has with the team that he loves, that he supports, and they're all Nike, branded in that association there. And if you can bring a brand and bring a property or organization that can help kind of marry that together, and the passion around that association with that team, or that venue, or that community theater, or whatever it is, or that fair, or what that association, that's powerful. And I also think we'll kind of get into this a little bit, but that is why a lot of these organizations that are on here today trying to learn, their marks and logos are super valuable, right? And important. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that, but like that brand association, there's a dollar to that you need to capitalize because of that brand association as well too.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I mean, I think Jeff from Microsoft really said it well when he encouraged the audience he urged them to ask yourself, how is this sponsorship making people's lives better? How is it contributing positively to the world? I mean, that's how he's evaluating sponsorships, right? How is it demonstrating our shared values? How is it helping to build brand love? And I always like to ask the question, how is this enhancing the guest experience, or how is it perhaps, solving a problem? Every, great sponsorship, I think, puts the customer, the fan, the student at the center, looks at it from that perspective and says, how is this sponsorship going to enhance their experience? And how is this sponsorship going to support the community and drive brand love? So imagine if you, as a sponsorship seller, were considering those things in every proposal you sent out. I bet they would look differently.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And we do have someone who mentioned on here, can you please provide more information about the conference as we look into it for next year? Jessica Beebe asked that. Do you mind just giving a little more info on the conference?
Oh, yeah, I'd love to. So next year we'll be well, you guys on this call today are the only ones who know this, so keep this secret. So I'm in Minneapolis right now, and I'm either going to Chicago or Nashville to select our venue for next year. Our goal is we'll hold the Sponsorship Mastery Summit either the 4th week of September or the 1st week of October, and it's going to be either in Nashville or Chicago. Our guests from last year all want to go to Nashville next year. So we'll see what happens. But it's a 2.5 day, it's like this all you can eat buffet of sponsorship, right? It's so you get to come together and be inspired and unite with people in sponsorship who speak language. And we have keynote speakers and roundtables and workshops and training sessions, and it's all sponsorship for 2.5 days, and we have a lot of parties and we have a pretty good time. And Jason, you guys have been a sponsor of the summit in the past, so
Yep.
you know how much fun it is. But
yeah, that's awesome.
Also, we also want it to be inspiring and educational. It's the only conference right now happening in the US, and last year we sold out, and I expect we probably will next year too. So just visit us at sponsorshipassociation.com and make sure you subscribe to get our sponsorship news, and then we'll send you information on it too. But put it in your plans for next year.
Perfect. And so it's coming back into this.
Yeah.
What took place in the hallways in between sessions? What didn't maybe get talked about at the summit, or things that we should be talking about more? What do you feel like are those bullet points, those topics?
Yeah, thanks, Jason. I really appreciate you asking this question. Here it is. There's a huge gap between the experience that brands are having and that sponsorship sellers are providing. And as an industry, we have to close that gap. And it's very wide, and it's very surprising. And we talk to brands all over the country, and there's a lot of research and insight and feedback that we get from brands on this topic. There's a very big gap between what they're looking for, what they need, what they expect, and what they're getting. So we have to close that gap. And I think as an industry, we're still presenting generic, multi-level sponsorship programs. Throw those away. We're still not asking the right questions when we go into meetings. We're not being as well prepared as we should be. We're not customizing every step of the sales process. We're not using a sales process in some cases. And we still aren't doing a very good job around explaining how we arrived at our pricing, and we're not providing enough audience data. And I'll just kind of say in closing here, what really surprises me is that I think there's a lack of sales planning and sales management that's put around sponsorship sales. So we don't have a process, we don't have a plan. And the last couple of times I've spoken, I've asked the audience to share with me who went into this last year with a sponsorship sales plan, and very few people raised their hands. And so we have to change that, right? We can't achieve a higher level of success if we don't have a plan on how we're going to do that. So we got to have a plan into next year, and we need to have a sales process, and we need to be tracking it. We need to be putting sales management acumen around the selling of our sponsorships.
Awesome. I love that. Jesse, should we check and get a pulse on those who are on this webinar of what they think we should be talking about more? We can kind of touch on some
Do
of
it. Thanks for the reminder, Jason. I almost forgot about the poll. I'll launch it now. Give everyone about a minute to go ahead and answer. You should see it on your screen now. Which area of your sponsorship efforts would you most like to improve for 2024? This will kind of help guide our conversation here a bit today. And then Jason and Paula, can you all see the responses to these, or do I need to share my screen to kind of show you what it looks like?
Right now we can see the poll.
We can see the poll.
You can see the poll.
But we can't vote.
Okay.
Paula and I can't vote, but we can see the question.
Okay, great. Are you seeing the live answers coming through too?
No.
You're not? Okay. Yeah, I'll share my screen here in about 20 seconds, just kind of show everyone what these results were like.
Ooh, what do you think it's going to be, Jason? What's going to be the biggest one?
I think I'm going to go with planning.
Planning. Nobody likes planning.
Planning and research.
Planning, I think, is daunting for people, right? Yeah, I think pricing. We'll see.
Pricing. Okay. All right.
Let's see what they said.
Let's see. It's not letting me share my screen on the poll, but it looks like the winner is Better Proposals.
There you go.
35% of you voted that Better Proposals was kind of your biggest thing you'd like to improve. The second was measurements. Third was research. Wow. So really good stuff there. Thanks everyone for participating.
No one loves the plan. Right?
You know, it's the planning is so important, but yeah. No, not too many people love planning the way I do. I'm kind of
maybe I just want to plan better, too.
All right, call me. I need to help you plan.
Hey, Jesse, that did pop up for a second and then it just went away. I don't know.
Yeah, I figured out how to share it after I shared my screen with everybody. So yeah, mental note taken there.
Okay, awesome. Great. Well, Paula, should we tackle Better Proposals? Just because that was number one. Let's do that. Do you want to touch on that?
Yeah, I'd love to. I'll just give you a couple of quick thoughts on Better Proposals. First of all, let me say this. I think that there's a storytelling piece. Some of you might refer to it as your capabilities or your overview, or there should be a presentation piece that talks about your property, very high level, right? 10 slides, data. This is your chance to talk about how does your audience align with their target consumer? How does your brand align with their brand? And there's a storytelling piece. And I think that's what you show at that first meeting. What I often see is that that storytelling piece, we'll call it for today, combined with a proposal, and it's in one big document. And I think that's one of the problems that we have. So have a storytelling piece, and then a proposal should be something separate. It should be short. You should ask sponsors, how would they like to see the proposal? Some people really do just want the bullet point. So I think the important thing is ask. When someone wants to see that proposal from you, how do they want to see it? What would they like to look at? But, for the most part, I think what's important with proposals is that they have to be customized. It can't be level 1, 2, or 3, and here's the price, and here's the long list of benefits. And if you have a table that shows the check marks on the assets, and there's often very little difference between those levels and the pricing, it just doesn't work. It doesn't serve you well. So get rid of that.
And putting together, and I would also add that adding here's package 1, package 2, and package 3 for you to choose from are not ideal either as well, because you're basically giving them a buffet to go to and choose from, which they want. You need to know their needs. You need to know exactly what is going to build, and it's different for every single brand. And so you have to ask really good questions.
I think as sellers, that's often where we're, falling short these days is asking the right questions in that first meeting to really understand what their needs are. And, here's the thing. If your proposal is not customized specifically to a particular company, then don't present it. it's not the right proposal. So a great proposal restates what their objectives are. A great proposal leads with an idea. It is not a list of assets. It's an idea, right? Here's the concepts behind our partnership. And then you have that list of those assets. But I think those are some of the keys to a good proposal. It's
Well,
got to be customized.
And I'll transition to research a little bit from here to Paula, because this goes in a little bit with what we're talking about here, is making sure that you have done your research on the brand going into the company. Never, ever show up to a first meeting with a brand with a proposal. And I sat on the brand side for one of the larger credit unions in the country for almost 10 years. And if someone came in and just threw a proposal or a package at me, it wasn't as received well, because probably 75, maybe 80% of what was on that proposal was not important to what I needed at that time, right? For my marketing needs for 2020, whatever, right? 2023. Like, and it will change. Your marketing needs for a brand will change year to year as well too. So coming in and asking a lot of questions. What is important to you? Paula, you mentioned that there was someone who, like, community and giving back to the community was the most important thing of how they saw value back. That's a whole different conversation. Now you have to be creative on how are we going to help this brand give back to the community at my state fair, or at my sports venue, or at my museum. How am I going to help them be able to tell the story about giving back to the community? And that takes sometimes some creative thinking and research, and finding out what is going to be the good thing. And really, from a research standpoint, it's understanding the research and understanding what their demographics are and your demographics are, and make sure that they match up the right way. So that's number one too. If if a brand is heavily skewed to teenagers, and your visitors that come to your museum are in their 50s, it's probably not the best, the best match there. Maybe there's some ways that you can attack it to get to their parents, right? With it. And there's some creative ways that you can do that, but you have to think through that and use research in order to have that. And I would say with research, if you've done your research well, you can become an excellent storyteller, right? Yeah. You can go in and tell the story of why it is so important for your brand and to be associated. Ask those questions, tell the story. And then when you come back for a second, or maybe even a third time, that's when you have the proposal, because you've understand their needs. You have a list of everything, of everything there that is interesting to them. And just understanding that target audience. And then also just, from a competitor analysis research, I'll just kind of speak on that just a little bit too. It is important to understand who your competitors are. And if you're a sports team, well, the museum down the street is a competitor of yours. The event, in the neighboring city is a competitor of yours. They could go spend money in other places. Understand the competitive landscape and make sure that you are having the right discussions there. It just helps you be able to navigate and negotiate a little bit better, with it too. Just understanding, if they don't spend money with me, if I'm pitching somebody, where would they go spend that money? And that just might be even media. It might be TV and radio. It might be digital media, social media ads. So you have to really understand how, if they go spend dollars over here in digital marketing or TV, why is it better for them to take money from over here and put it, towards your venue? And that takes research and that takes understanding so that you can tell the right story with that.
Yeah, and Paula, it looks like a few of us here in the chat are kind of asking, what are some of those questions, kind of in reference back to the proposals? What are some of those questions we have to be making sure we're asking? Or do those vary based on, who you're working with? I think we've got a few people asking that same question, if you don't mind expanding a bit there.
All right. Thank you. That's a really great question. So this is a good chance for me to also plug SMA. If you're a member of SMA, one of the things we have in our member hub is a list of questions you should ask in a first meeting with a potential partner. So I love this question. Let me just toss out a couple that come to the top of my mind that I always like to ask, because, for me, selling sponsorships, it's not theoretical. It's something that I do every day. I'll be working on a proposal today, a matter of fact. And so couple of things. I never pick up the phone or send an email or do any kind of outreach to a sponsor unless I know at least 5 key things about them, just to back up Jason's really important point. So just make that a business practice for yourself right now. No outreach until you know at least 5 things, because when you do that research, the questions are going to come naturally, right? It's going to become clear what kind of questions you should be asking so you can further clarify their goals, their mission, their audience, right? And their brand. I always like asking questions around, what are, I like to ask questions, first of all, sorry, let me back up on this. I never ask a question that I should know the answer to by looking at a website. I never sit down and ask a question like, so tell me more about your business, right? I don't ask questions that I should know the answer to when I do my research. So I ask questions that are more aligned with, tell me what your thoughts are about sponsorship. Do you have a particular sponsorship that you've done recently that you would consider best in class? And can you tell me a little bit about that? I always try to ask questions in a very conversational way, so it doesn't feel like it's an interview, right? I really am curious about what their challenges are and how they feel about sponsorship. So I like to ask just general questions about what do they think about the sponsorship as a marketing discipline within their company? Is it something they're doing more of or less of? What do they like about sponsorship? What don't they like about sponsorship? It's critical to understand who are they trying to reach? Who are their target consumers? And so I like asking questions around that. And I always like to ask questions, that are simple for them to answer, but really, help provide a lot of insight, such as, just give me 5 keywords that describe, your brand. Are there any goals that you have had for this year that you didn't accomplish that I might be able to help you accomplish next year? So there's a couple of quick ones, but become a member of SMA and you'll get a list of, many questions to ask.
Yeah, and I'll also add like strategy too. Like, what is your marketing strategy overall? Just understanding their marketing strategy as an organization is important to understand. And do they have a sponsorship strategy, right? And as part of that marketing plan, and they might say no, right? And if they say no, asking them why. Like, explain why, and maybe there's a way that you can tell the right story in order to make sure that they need to be with your organization based on their overall marketing needs, and maybe not necessarily the sponsorship strategy, because maybe just the person that you're talking to had a negative sponsorship experience. Maybe they signed a contract and no one did anything for them, right? So we all know how that turns out. Yeah, and so, so you have to be sensitive a little bit to that, and understanding what those marketing needs are. I always like to call them the pillars of a sponsorship, which is big brand. A lot of times sponsors are going to want so either they're going to want one of these things, right, or all of them, or an array of all of them, in a sponsorship package, which is branding, actionable marketing, which could be anything that's going to help that they can track back of any business that comes from it. So whether it's like I don't even know if we have these anymore, but like everything's digital now, but ticket backs, or like some sort of like promo code item that comes back so they can track, hey, this is what came back from it. Community, we already talked about that, tying themselves back into the community somehow. Business development, is also a big key that I think gets forgotten a lot in sponsorship, is that you can use the assets of tickets or hosting or hospitality and those things to help them gain more business. You're providing an experience for them to be able to bring potential customers to have a really good experience, and then they buy it from the brand, right? So that gets forgotten a lot sometimes there, that you have, that is an actual sponsorship, tangible sponsorship element from a business development standpoint. And then just straight media. Do you have media elements? And that can include social media, but also like, you know, the TVs and the radios and where they can get their message out. And usually those are the things that a brand is going to want most. And maybe they want one or two of those things, or maybe they want all of them, but those are usually the big ones there.
Yeah. And knowing that, you know, we did over this last year, we did a sponsorship leaders research project to really understand what are some of those key objectives of brands, and what are the things that brands want from people who are selling sponsorships. And there's a lot of great information there, and it mirrors a lot of what you just said, Jason. And I think just taking that information and now crafting questions around each one of those points is a good place to start. You know, the one other thing, I can't believe I didn't say this before, but most important question in that first meeting is, how will you determine the success of the work we do together?
Yes. Absolutely.
How are you going to measure this sponsorship? That's a question that should be asked in that very first meeting before you've ever presented anything, right?
100%.
We have to understand how they're going to determine if it was successful. That question alone gives you so much insight, because if they tell you that it's going to be based on social media, well, now you know the kinds of ideas and customized proposal that you need to put together. It needs to be focused on social media, because that's how they're going to measure the success.
Sure.
So, you know, that gives you a really good direction, right?
Yeah. I mean, if they tell you, hey, if we do this, we need to get X amount of, I'll use a financial institution since that's my background. We need this many checking accounts to come back from this, or loans, or whatever it may be. Then you need to go back and craft something that's going to make sure that they can actually track a lot of that. I'll give an example. When I was at the credit union, we sponsored the Utah Jazz, and that was one of my things, was like, I need to drive new accounts. And so we did a two-week promotion where if you opened up a new checking account with Mountain America Credit Union, you would get a free authentic Jazz jersey, replica Jazz jersey. And so the Jazz went back, crafted this, brought it back, and we implemented it into our branches and promoted it. And we ended up with so many new accounts in a 2-week period, you know, because it goes back, we were using the power of the Jazz and the brand, the brand of the Jazz to be able to do that, and the passionate fan base to come in and do that. And now that they came in and they have these checking accounts, now from a brand standpoint, I can now market them to new auto loans and new home loans and all of this. There's more opportunities to grow that, but that was a successful thing that they brought, and they had to be creative. That's not a thing that you have, you know, just as a rate card value over there. You can be creative, and they actually packaged, you know, assets together to be able to do that. And so it takes some brain power a little bit, and you have to take the time in order to craft something that meets their needs.
And Jason, as a local Utah Jazz fan, I still remember that sponsorship. I remember when that was going live, and I was like, wow, that's really cool.
Did you get your checking account?
It's funny. I already had a checking account in Mountain America, so I don't know if I qualified, but I just, that left an impression on me. It's like, wow, that's a great campaign they're running. So anyways.
Jesse, how are we doing on time?
We're getting close. I think we can wrap up in the next 10 minutes. We got a couple more bullet points to get through, and then we can jump to some Q&A if anyone has any questions at the end.
Yeah, I'll just touch on pricing real quick, and then Paul, I'll let you finish up, and then we'll tackle the Q&A. But you know, from a pricing standpoint, you know, at Sponsor CX, we, as part of our onboarding process, we take a lot of people's inventory and put it into our software, be able to have the pricing and be able to put it all together and be able to put these proposals together. And so we have a lot of discussion with organizations on pricing a lot, right? And a lot of people will pay, you know, a good amount of money to have someone come in and do valuations and all of that. And at times we'll do that as well. But I know Paula and her agency will do that as well too. But I think from a pricing standpoint, there's three things that I think, you know, you need to think about when it comes to pricing. One being developing pricing, you know, strategies. And so when you're putting rates together, it's understanding, and I kind of mentioned this before, understanding where they could go spend that money, as well. If they want to go buy a billboard on the interstate there, what's going to keep them from buying that billboard versus buying some signage in your facility, right? And so you have to understand, what are they selling that billboard for? How many eyeballs does it get? How many does mine get? And understanding the pricing around that. And then striking this balance between maximizing the revenue that you bring into your property, but then also providing a great ROI for the brand, right? It needs to be a good win-win there. And so I usually like to say somewhere in the 80% to 100% of rate card value, you know, there, once you kind of establish that. But you have to balance this, strike this balance of making sure that you're pricing it so that they can see the value and be able to have a great ROI, but then also you're maximizing your revenue, because that's what you do in sales, right? You got to maximize and drive as much revenue as you can there. So that's developing the pricing strategies there. Value proposition is, what opportunities can you provide that no one else can? And like getting on a whiteboard and outlining what are the things that we do, and maybe a fair and a festival can do that maybe the Golden State Warriors cannot do, but they can do it, right? Better than the Golden State, even though they're the Golden State Warriors, what can your festival and fair do that's better than them, right? And understanding what that value proposition is, and then don't sell yourself short on it. I talked about marks and logos earlier. That definitely is a valuable asset. It should never just be thrown into a deal. Like, there should be value associated with that. And so make sure that you're charging for it, and then thinking through, what can you provide? What type of experiences can you provide a sponsor that no one else can? And that separates you, and making sure that you have a great value there. And then just negotiation techniques would be the third one, which I did touch on here, of never go to a first meeting with a proposal. Make sure that you understand, because it will only help you in the negotiation stage, and it will help you in negotiating pricing, you know, of where it is too. Because if you know that social media is very valuable to them, then that social media is maybe more valuable than what you have a rate associated with it as well too, because it's valuable to them. I know that I've had certain things come to me where I value something when I was sitting on the brand side with Mountain America, where they would bring something, and it was the throw-in that was actually the most valuable to me than the rest of it, right? And so it's just understanding what's most important to the brand going in, and that will help your pricing to make sure it's a win-win, and that helps with your negotiation, you know, techniques there. But Paula, anything else you want to add?
Absolutely. When I was on the buying side, the first question that I would ask is, how did you determine the price of this sponsorship opportunity? Depending upon the response to that question, told me if I was in a negotiating position or not, and immediately told me your savviness as a sponsorship seller. So here's what's important on pricing. Have a methodology, whatever that methodology is. Be able to respond confidently to that question when it is asked. How did you arrive at the pricing of the sponsorship opportunity? You have to be able to respond to it confidently. We're going to be doing a webinar for our members in the very near future where we share our pricing structure and our methodology, and how do we determine the value of assets, and how do we determine the value of the brand. And Jason, your point is such a good one. Your brand is your most valuable asset. So how do you determine what that price is? And we have a way to help you to do that. So really important that you have a methodology, whoever you work with, however you come up with it, but just have one.
Absolutely. And then did you want to touch on one more bullet point, and then we'll go to Q&A? Paula, do you want to take the next?
Let's not talk about planning, because no one wants to talk about that.
All right, sounds good. Let's just go to Q&A then. We'll talk planning another day.
You know, I'll just say this. It doesn't have to be a 20-page document. It can be a 1-page document. Just have some kind of plan. And I think we have a step-by-step guide on how to create a plan for next year on our website. So give me a call if you need some help with the planning.
Yes, absolutely. It's important. Planning is important. We'll leave it at that. But Jesse, do you want to get the Q&As going?
Yeah, sure. So let's see here. We answered a good chunk of these as we were kind of going. Looks like Darla just asked, my question is, what avenues of prospecting new brands do you recommend?
So Darla, here's what I would do. Old school, put a big piece of Post-it note paper up on the wall and make a list of all the characteristics of your property's audience and your brand, and then make a list of the companies who are a bullseye target for those brand descriptions and your brand audience. The best prospects are the ones that align with your brand and your audience. Don't go after a company because they're spending money in the market or they're working with somebody else. Go after the ones that make sense to your audience and that you can align with their audience. Those are the best brands.
I would also add to that as well, and I 100% agree with that. It's also looking at what types of brands do you have sponsoring now, and what are categories that maybe you want to be able to have associated. Maybe you don't have a hospital partner, right? And then you can making a list of all the different hospital partners that are out there, right? And have and try and find out who those people are, or the connections that you have on LinkedIn with maybe people at those organizations. And really look at it from a category standpoint, and see where your deficiencies are in different categories of brands that you don't have. Because maybe you have a ton of QSR, right? Maybe you just have like tons of local restaurants that are like, sponsoring your venue, but you don't have an auto partner or a hospital partner, and just really being a little more strategic. You could add more QSR, but what happens is when you get too saturated with one category is they all start to get a little bit frustrated because you have a ton of that category. And if you could spread the category out a little bit, that actually helps with brand satisfaction with your organization as well too. Hopefully that helps.
Okay. Any other questions before we wrap up? We're getting close to our time limit here. Trying to look through any more that came through. All right, your last one here. We are new into the sponsorship world. Is there a sample template that you can provide for us to use as an outline of what should be included? Question from Abraham.
Jason, do you want to answer that?
Yeah.
My answer is come to Sponsorship Association, become a member, and you're going to get everything that you need.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And I was going to say, for those that aren't necessarily familiar with Sponsor CX, I mean, from a template standpoint, we help people get out of your spreadsheets, right? So it's we take your templates and then we turn it into a sponsorship management software that helps you. So I'm always going to be, preaching that, and get out of your templates and get into a system that actually is going to help you manage your sponsorships effectively end to end, from prospecting and partner to managing your inventory to building your proposals and your agreements and your term sheets to then pushing it into your activation fulfillment piece and be able to all do that from your phone. So like that's really, I didn't necessarily want to do necessarily a full on pitch here, but that's your question would be like, let's get you out of like your spreadsheet templates and get you into something, more that's that. So
Jason, I'm really glad you took a moment to talk about this, because I think, when we look at how do you achieve a higher level of excellence next year? How do you reach your goals? You cannot manage what you can't measure. So if you're not measuring your activity and your prospects and your sales process, you have to put a sales discipline around the work that you're doing and the goals you have. Otherwise, it's not likely you're going to achieve them, right?
You got to have systems in
place. The
place.
work that you guys are doing it's what will change the industry.
Thank you. No, thank you, Paul. And that's what we do. We're sponsorship management. We are
Mhm.
We're not necessarily just built for the big guys. We're built for everybody, you know? So, I mean, it's important to have processes. I think that's maybe part of the planning piece is make sure that you have the processes in place to be successful, because it's hard to manage 50, 60, 100 different sponsors and make sure that they're all happy. Right.
Mhm.
You got to have the processes to do that. So thanks, Abraham, for that question.
That was great.
Can I plug our Academy training program?
Absolutely. Yeah, go for it.
Thanks. We since we're talking about process, so we have a 12-week training program that is based upon a 9-step sponsorship sales practice model that we have refined and honed in over decades of selling sponsorships. And so we're doing a pilot program right now, but the next one will kick off on February 1st. It's a 12-week program, 6 parts, based on a sponsorship sales process. And we really, we keep it real and we dig pretty deep because we know that success is in the nuance of what we do. You know, selling sponsorships, it is not easy. And we want to make it easier and make it faster. And so a sales process helps do that. So that's what we're teaching. And we hope that helps. So come sign up and join us for that in February. Thanks.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Great stuff. And look,
yeah, Jesse,
Go
you
ahead,
want me to take this anonymous attendee that just asked about sweetening the pot for a museum?
yeah. Let's
so,
take that one as our last one, and any others we'll get to after the fact, if that's okay.
Yeah, it says, as someone at a museum arts institution, I can't necessarily sweeten a pot with a lot of branding within my facility or branded handouts. What do you see as being the most exciting things we can provide to a sponsor? And I think that's awesome question. If someone is wanting branding, let's just kind of take it at that step. If someone's wanting branding specifically, you don't necessarily have to put a big logo on a wall or any of that too. You do have it's the other assets that make it exciting, or you're being creative to create that branding piece. Is there an event that takes place that's not maybe as permanent at the museum that you can create for the brand, right? To be able to take advantage of your of the marks and logos and the association with the museum, but for 5 days a week or whatever, maybe they do have some exposure outside the building as part of an event that takes place that does come down, that's not up permanent. Creating some sort of event or excitement or social media campaign, or as I mentioned, some sort of tying in your museum to that brand to be able to do some exciting in store or in branch or in brick and mortar type of promotions tied to the museum, because they can have things that are exciting in their own doors at the brand using your marks and logos, right? And so there's ways that they can maximize that and use that without just throwing a big logo, permanent sign, inside the museum, that way.
Take a look at Henry Ford Museum. Watch what it is they're doing and how they are integrating sponsors into their exhibits. Take a look at the Chicago Museum of Industry and Science. They are also incorporating sponsors into exhibits. And the Denver Museum of Art. Those are 3 museums, all very different, all leading the way on the integration of sponsors into their museums. And the other thing that I would say is, if the museum leadership wants you to sell sponsorships, there has to be a willingness throughout organizations, and this goes for outside of museums as well, but to effectively use the assets to create these sponsorship opportunities, because this is a marketing decision that sponsors are making. It's not a philanthropic one. That means it has to be measurable. It has to deliver results, and you have to be able to use the museum assets to do it. So that's one of the things that just you kind of raised in my mind is I wonder if there's some question around that. And
having some of those internal discussions on what can be, because I've seen that even here with some aquariums and things like that, where they'll sponsor exhibits and It's not gigantic logos, but it's there, you know, with
Yeah.
with the exhibit. There has to be a willingness for management, and if they're going to hire a sponsorship person, that's a great point, Paula. Like there has to be some flexibility, you know, with
Yep.
that.
Yeah,
Point.
for sure.
Well, we're getting close to our limit. I don't want us to get cut off by Zoom. I think our limit is 1 hour, and we're getting pretty close to it. But just want to thank everyone for joining today's panel discussion with Jason and Paula. I learned some awesome things. Hopefully, everyone here took some good notes, learned some good nuggets to take away for next year. You know, final pitch for SMA Summit. Go to it next year. You'll meet awesome sponsorship leaders, learn tons of great things. Well, it sounds like we'll be in Chicago or Nashville. We'll be sure to be there as well. And
Good.
then if your organization is looking for some help with managing their sponsorship processes, feel free to check out Sponsor CX at our website, sponsorcx.com. You can request a demo, learn more, see how it works for your organization. But thank you everyone for joining today. We will be sending out this recording to everyone who registered. So check your inbox sometime today or tomorrow. You should see that show up. And thanks again, everyone, for joining. Paula, Jason, you guys were awesome.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah,
Thanks,
thank
Paula,
you
for
so
coming.
much. Hey, Jason, thanks for the invitation.
Love it.
Good
Love
job,
it.
Jesse. Thank you for your help too.
We'll do it again, guys.
You bet,
Thank you.
Paula.
Okay.
See you. Bye.
See ya. Take care, guys. Bye.